Hello, my name's Tony Lockett. I'm Head of Communication at the European Research Council. And we're here today to talk about citizen science, particularly how to get young people engaged in scientific research. I'm going to be talking to some top scientists who involve members of the public in their research work. We're going to be connecting with two school groups, one in Spain and one in Ukraine. And we're also going to be hearing from a real-life astronaut. But before we get started, I'd like to see if we can learn a bit more about our online audience. We'd love to hear from you. We hope to make this session interactive. We're going to be using Slido for that purpose. So you're very welcome to connect to Slido using the QR code you'll see on your screen, or you can simply go to slido.com in your browser. And the hashtag we're going to be using for the event today is ERC Engage. So please do connect, and we're going to be sharing with you some questions just to get a feel for who's following us online at our event today. But now I'd like to introduce our first special guest. We're really delighted to have a video message to share with you from celebrity European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet from France. He's spent in total 6 months in space. He was on the International Space Station just last year, where he was in command, in fact. And I'm sure many of you will have followed him. He posts on his social media very regularly amazing images from space. He's also published a book, a photo book, La Terre entre nos mains, and he's a fantastic ambassador for the environment, and he encourages all of us to do what we can to take better care of the planet that we live on. So we're really delighted that Thomas took the time to record this video message for us today. So let's look and listen to what he has to share with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, buenas tardes a todos. Guten Nachmittag alle. Buen pomeriggio. Many thanks to the European Research Council for inviting me. The engagement of young people for the planet is a topic dear to my heart, and I'm delighted to join you in this event. I am an astronaut. I've been fortunate to live in space, and I can assure you my favorite pastime on the International Space Station was to simply look out the window and contemplate our planet. The view is breathtaking, and nothing compares to the feeling of seeing the planet in its entirety glowing as you're flying above. But I came back to Earth with a great concern. From space, it's very clear that our planet is fragile. The layer of the atmosphere is so thin, it looks like a soap bubble. But the most concerning thing is the consequences of human activities, and therefore of climate change, that you can see with the naked eye. During my most recent mission, we saw devastating hurricanes forming in the Atlantic, one after the other, and hurling towards the coast, something I had not experienced during my first mission, only 5 years before. I also witnessed massive forest fires in Southern Europe, North Africa, North America, entire regions burning, covered with clouds of smoke. Those extreme events are getting more frequent and also more intense. It's urgent to act, but sometimes you find yourself unsure what to do. I recently visited schools and talked to students like those we'll hear today, and they asked those questions. Well, getting personally involved in research on science is one way that young people can contribute. This year, we have celebrated the European Year of Youth, shining a light on the importance of young people to build a better future. And I'm happy to see how the young generations are willing to save the planet. We have seen them rallying all around the world. We have seen them at the COP27 last month, demanding concrete actions to fight global warming. In a few minutes, we will hear some students that have taken part in scientific projects led by ERC grantees. It's a unique opportunity to experience science and research at the forefront and to show their engagement for the environment with a positive impact on our society. I want to praise here the efforts of the scientists that have been sounding the alarm about the threats to our natural habitats and that share their concerns, but also their passion for science with young people. I also want to thank the ERC for supporting all the scientists who have been pushing the frontiers of knowledge and who are exploring new paths to tackle many global challenges we face today. This is one of the European success stories. As a truly convinced European, I believe that we must continue to make efforts all together for a better future and for future generations. So, enjoy the show and see you soon.
Thanks very much to Thomas Pesquet for taking the time to record that message for us. Really very inspiring and encouraging, and I think a fantastic start to our event this afternoon. And thanks also to our colleagues from the European Space Agency for making that possible. So let's see now if we can return to Slido. As I said before, we heard from Thomas Pesquet. We would love to have an idea of who's following us online today. So we had a number of questions, 3 actually, that we put to you, and hopefully we can share the results now. Hopefully you were able to connect to Slido while we were listening to Thomas Pesquet. So if we could have the first question up, and we can have a look to see where people are joining us from this afternoon. Well, it seems that France and Romania are very well represented. Let's see if there are other parts of Europe and the world that have people following us online this afternoon. Then we had a second question about the age profile of our audience this afternoon. As I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to be talking particularly about involving young people in scientific research. So we thought it would be interesting to see if we have any young people following this afternoon. So let's have a look and see what the age breakdown is of those who were able to reply to our little questionnaire on Slido. Okay, well, if there's a technical problem with Slido, maybe we should move along. Yeah, okay, we'll perhaps come back to Slido later. By the way, technology permitting, you can also use Slido to put in some questions that you'd like to ask to our speakers at the event today. So let's come back to that later. But now let me introduce our 3 guests that I have with me in the studio today. So on my immediate left, Josefa Gonzalez, who is a researcher with the Spanish National Research Council. And Josefa, your research looks at how living organisms adapt to their natural environment. And you co-lead a citizen science project, which is called, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Melanogaster, Catch the Fly. So we're going to be hearing all about that in a moment. And then on your left, we have Marcus Collier from Trinity College Dublin. Thanks very much for being with us, Marcus. Marcus looks at the connections between people and nature, including wild spaces in cities, so particularly looking at the urban environment. And Marcus has ERC funding for a citizen science project called Novel Eco. So we're going to be hearing about that one too. And then it's also great that we're joined by Professor Eveline Crone, who's Vice President of the ERC Scientific Council. Eveline is a full professor at the Erasmus University Rotterdam, as well as Leiden University. And her research focuses on the transition between childhood and adulthood, so particularly on adolescence. And your research involves a lot of interaction with young people themselves. You really do try to involve them in your research. So great that you could be with us as well, Eveline. So Josefina, let me turn to you first. Your research is specifically about fruit flies, Drosophila, I think is the technical term. Can you tell us a little bit, and our online audience especially, why fruit flies are important and what you hope to learn through the research that you're doing?
Yes, of course. So our research focuses on trying to understand how organisms adapt to the environment, as you mentioned. And this means identifying the genes and the molecular processes that are more relevant for adaptation. And this is very important because it has applications, several applications, but especially is relevant in our current context of climate change. So what we do is we sample natural populations of Drosophila melanogaster, you pronounce it very well, that are adapted to as many different environments as possible. And Drosophila is a very good organism to do this kind of studies because it has very recently adapted to many, many different environments in the planet. And this is where the Citizen Science Project comes in handy, because what we do is we ask young people to collaborate with us in the sampling and the classification of natural populations. So they collect these samples nearby the high schools, and then they send it to us in Barcelona, where we are going to be sequencing the whole genome, comparing the genomes, and identifying the genes that are more relevant. But young people are not only involved in the sampling, But we also have created other activities that are part of the Citizen Science Project and that allow them to experimentally validate data that we generate and also to analyze data bioinformatically. And I think this is also very relevant because it means that they get very familiar with the scientific process. So this is another of our objectives. And we have a new activity that in which we also involve the students not only in monitoring the local biodiversity, but also environmental variables. So what we are actually doing with the students is generating evidence of the impact of climate change. And our objective there is to help bring a change in the citizens towards a society that is more sustainable.
And so you've mentioned the school groups that you work with, and we're going to be connecting with some of the school students in a moment. But perhaps I could ask you, how important is that collaboration with the schools for your research? Is it a kind of nice to have side activity, or is it really something essential and you couldn't, in a way, carry out the research without their involvement?
Yeah, so it's very essential for us because it allows us to have access to many more samples of natural populations that we would be able to do without them. I mean, like going to the field for us scientists, it involves an investment of time and of money. But by involving the high schools, I mean, they just go collect nearby the high schools and send in the sample to us, so we have a much better monitoring of natural populations of Drosophila. So very important.
Okay. Perhaps just a last question before we connect with the students in Spain. It sounds great, but I'm sure it's not always plain sailing. You must have faced some challenges along the way. What were the difficulties and how did you overcome them?
No, so it runs pretty smoothly, the project, because I think the key aspect is that the teachers are very involved. So the teachers really see the value of approaching science and an active scientific project to their students. So they see it really as an added value to the education, for the education that they do to the kids. Yeah. So it's pretty much running very smoothly.
Okay, that's good to hear. Well, let's check then with the first of the school groups. So hopefully we have online with us some students from the school Eladio Cabañero in Tomelloso in Spain. So I think Antonio, Celia, Lydia and David should be connected with us. Hi.
We are Antonio, Lydia, David and Celia, and we are students from the Eladio Cabañero in Tomelloso, Spain, which is a very arid place, but doesn't mean it's boring. It's also known as the land of Don Quixote.
The first thing we want to say is to say thanks to all the people that has helped us, and that we are really excited and happy of being part of this project because we feel like we are real scientists. And please don't make us a really complicated questions.
I'll try. Okay. Well, it's really great that you could be with us. And I think if I'm not wrong, it's actually a school holiday in Spain. So it shows how committed you are that you've come into school, especially today, to talk to us. So thanks very much for that. Perhaps I could ask you first off, what did you enjoy most about participating in this project? So the field work and the lab work that you've done around collecting the fruit flies and analyzing them.
I think both of them are really nice works because one, you are with your partner just having fun and searching the flies, but I really prefer more the lab work because it's a little bit more complicated and I can learn new things that I don't know before.
Yeah, also I think in the lab we feel like real scientists, and I think is what we really enjoy. But being in the fields with our classmates and being near to the science while we are having fun is the best of this project because we are involved in science while we are with our classmates. So it's very important for us. We are so pleased about this.
Great.
In addition, I think this project is very interesting for us because in the future we would like to be scientists. So this is like a first contact with this science field and world.
And in my opinion, I think that both lab work and also the field work is very important, both of them, because if one of them disappears, the other one cannot exist.
Great. And can I ask you, what did you find the most fun aspect of the project? Is it fun now for you to come to science lessons at school because you've participated in this research?
Could you?
Yes, this project has been very fun. For example, the part when we went to collect the flies in the field has been very, very interesting because we went with our friends and we had a great time collecting the flies because we were combining the two things that we like the most, science and our friends.
I think the best part of it was the PCR when we were with the Citizen Fly Lab project. We take the flies and look for the jumping gene that was the provoker of the adaptation. I think that was really fun because I learned a lot about PCR, which was really important in that years because of the COVID.
Well, and I also have to add that when we came from the fields, from taking the flies, we didn't want to know anything about melons because we smell to melon like 1 month and it's horrible. And that's all.
Okay. So Antonio, Celia, Lydia, David, thank you very much for connecting with us and sharing your experiences this afternoon. We wish you all the best, and we take note of the fact that you're all intending to become scientists in the future. So who knows, you could be future ERC grantees in a few years' time. In any case, it's been very nice talking to you, and all the best with your future school studies.
Yeah. Also, we have to give thanks firstly to Josefa Gonzalez, that is the main research in our boss, and to all the scientists that are involved in these projects and those who not, because they work every day to make our life better, and we have to be very, very pleased. Also, a big help to Ukraine and to the European Union. Give many thanks for have given us all the resources we have needed.
Also, finally, I want to add that we hope that you have enjoyed this talk, and also we have enjoyed this talk, and goodbye.
We enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so now let's go from central Spain to Odessa, Ukraine, where we have students from the Maria School, Maria, Lucia, Mikhailo, and Iham, together with their teacher, Denis Radionov. So let's hope we have Odessa on the line. Hi.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I mean, teaching science and studying science is challenging at the best of times, but I think it's very difficult for us to imagine how challenging it must be for you being based in Ukraine with the war going on. So I know you had to come to a different location because there was a power cut in your school today. So thanks so much for taking the trouble to connect with us. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. And Denis, could I start by asking you a question? I'm just curious to know how your school came to be involved in the research project of Josefa that we were hearing about earlier.
Hello. My students that you can see here collect the samples near Odessa. It was the first 2 years, and today and now this year I collect fruit flies in atrial population, and my students only analyze these flies, and my research advice of my PhD project Professor Koziecka told me about this project, and he told me about it, and I was very glad to join this project because it is very interesting for my students, I think so.
Thanks very much, Dennis. So let's hear from the students if we can. Perhaps one or two of you would just like to share with us what motivated you to get involved in this. Why did you think it would be interesting for you?
Yes. For me, this project is very important because I want to associate my life with biology. I joined some course of bioinformatics and genome analysis. So for me, it's really interesting.
This project is very important for us because it can be a valuable experience for us, and we can help to solve problems like global warming or other problems with it. Only help.
Okay.
So I'm joining this project because in the future I want to be a doctor. This project will be so important for me because I want to learn more about genetics and something else.
Our biology teacher invited us to participate in this project 3 years ago, and I liked it very much. And now I would like to participate in many biological researches, so I like it. Yes.
And we just heard from the Spanish students some of the things that they liked the most about participating and going out into the fields, doing the field work, but also in the lab. For you, what were the most enjoyable parts of the experience?
Most enjoyable when 2 years ago we went out of the town to the vineyards and caught drosophilas. Probably that's the most enjoyable, I think.
Okay.
For me, it's work in the lab. It's very interesting to differentiate the flies by gender and see some mutation of them. So it was very, very interesting.
For me, was also the most interesting part of work is field work. When we went out of the city and caught fruit flies on vineyards, it was fun and enjoyable for me.
Most of all, I'd like to explore Drosophila, of course, and like determine their gender and work in the team. That's so funny.
Great. Okay, well, thanks so much. I know it was challenging for you guys to connect with us this afternoon, so thanks so much. It's been really wonderful hearing from you. And as well, good luck with all of your future studies at school and beyond. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. So perhaps...
Bye.
Josefa, can I turn back to you? It was really lovely to hear directly from the school students. I'm so happy we could arrange that. But perhaps some of the people who are watching us are wondering if it's possible still to get involved in your project. If there are teachers or school groups watching us, is it still possible to join up? And if so, how would they do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not only possible, but I really encourage schools and teachers to join the project. So we have a website that is melanogaster.eu, because like the European dimension is very important in our project. So I just encourage people to go to the website, and there they have all the information on how to join us.
Great, super. Thanks, Josefa. Maybe I can pass over to Marcus now. So Marcus, your Novel Eco project started a bit more recently than Josefa. So I think some of the activities are still getting going, but you have long years of experience of working in different EU projects. Can you tell us a little bit, first of all, about the focus of your research on wild zones, wild areas in cities, and what you hope to learn and to achieve in terms of results?
Well, sure. And it's hard to follow that, those students, such enthusiasm. The research I'm looking at is into novel ecosystems. Novel ecosystems are essentially ecosystems that have been created by people, either accidentally or deliberately. And so therefore all our cities could be considered to be novel ecosystems. And what we're looking at are the wild spaces in our cities. We saw during the COVID lockdown a lot of people were going out and noticing nature for the first time, probably. Plants growing out of their gardens and their walls in their parks. And so we're looking to see what people want to know or what people think of these. So at the moment we're running workshops in different cities to establish the research questions. In other words, we're asking citizens to design the research questions for us. Then once we have those questions, we will develop them into an app. And in doing that, we will be able to ask citizen scientists to record ecological data, but also to find out what they perceive with these ecosystems and these individual species. And one of the questions I'd like to know the answer to is, does being involved in a citizen science project change your behavior? That's what we're looking at.
Super interesting. I mean, perhaps one question I could ask you is, I mean, in your project it's going beyond data collection and observations, but actually involving the groups you're working with in designing the research questions, as you said. I mean, does that challenge the traditional status and role of researchers, that you know, it should not be themselves designing the questions, but it should be people from outside of their field, outside of the university walls?
Well, I think that the word is wall there. That's what we're trying to get across, that we don't want walls anymore. We don't want there to be a barrier between our universities and our researchers and the public. The European Research Council funds research, so it is the taxpayer who's funding our research. So it is only fair that the taxpayer is involved if they wish to be in our research, if they have the opportunity. So it is an interesting, I suppose, idea that in the past, most research was carried out by volunteers. 200 or 300 years ago, astronomers or naturalists, archaeologists. And then in recent years, it became very discipline specific and very professional inside the wall of the university. And I think with the advent of technology in the last 15 or 20 years, science has the opportunity to become more democratic and involve more people. And I think science can only benefit from that. And in fact, it's more going beyond science. It's just research, whether you call it science or not. It's research, citizen research rather than citizen science.
Interesting to see things in that historical perspective. We've almost come full circle, haven't we? Although in a more democratic way now, as you say, because of the technology being in all of our hands. For any researchers, ERC grantees or otherwise, who might be watching us, who might not yet be doing citizen science, but might be curious or interested, what advice or tips would you have in terms of getting started and perhaps branching out into this?
Not every subject matter lends itself to involving citizens. There are toxic materials and so on that obviously we can't do certain types of research with. But I feel that perhaps there might be a fear of involving and engaging with the public. There might be a fear that it's too high risk. But that's what the principle of the ERC is. It's high risk. And I think potentially with citizen research and citizen activity and engagement and co-creation, I feel that there's a potential higher gain than just if it was a research project all on its own. So I would say take the jump. I mean, if it's possible, if it may not be possible, if it's possible, and if it's exciting. And we were talking this morning about it's actually fun. You could hear from your students that they really enjoyed. They had a good fun doing it. I think that is a huge win for science, but it's also a huge win for people thinking about their careers and also about how they relate to each other.
Yeah. And you mentioned the session this morning. There was also a lot of interest, a lot of examples, but also people were asking for resources. Are there resources available online that people can turn to if they would like to learn a little bit more about the methods and tips and tricks in terms of doing citizen science?
Well, I'd say it's probably no better time than to be looking online for some information. There's quite a lot of information online, information like yours where you talk about your experiences, and we've seen that there's plenty of scientists who do blogs and plain speaking to the public about their work. And it's all available online. And there's also more availability of technology. There are more apps out there to involve people. In our situation, we're like to look at, are there apps that bring people closer to nature? And we know about the health and other benefits of being in contact with nature. So the technology is there, the desire is there, and I think the resources are very much there. So it's in our best interest is if we keep encouraging more people to be entering into the field, because the more questions we ask, the more interest we find among the community, and the more the community can participate in giving us answers to the questions.
Yeah. And we do have quite a lot of examples that we've put together of ERC grantees doing citizen science, including your own projects, but also a number of others. So if people go to the ERC website, they can also take some inspiration from those.
True.
I'll turn to Eveline in a second, but I understand that the technical problems we had earlier with Slido are now resolved. So perhaps we could go back to Slido and get a feel for who we have watching us online, but also see if there are any questions for Josefa and Marcus. Okay, well, in terms of geographical spread, it looks a little bit more diverse than earlier on. So Belgium in the lead, but then we have quite a number of other European countries. So great that we have people following us from all over Europe. And then in terms of the age profile of our audience, let's have a quick look. Okay, well, the majority are over 35, but we do have a third in their 20s or early 30s, and we have 5% of the people watching us in the 15 to 20-year-old age bracket. So I think that's great because, as I said, we are particularly looking at involving young people in scientific research. And then we also asked you whether you'd had previous experience participating in citizen science projects. So interestingly, the majority, 62% of our audience this afternoon have not yet had an opportunity to participate in a citizen science project. So hopefully today's event will provide some inspiration and also some tips in terms of how you can go about that, whether you're a researcher or whether you're a member of the public, young or otherwise, who would like to get involved in research. Now, I don't know if we have any questions that have come through via Slido for our speakers. Let's have a look. Okay, so Anonymous is asking if the event will be recorded. Yes, it is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording afterwards on the ERC's YouTube channel. So that's quite an easy one. Let's see if we have another one. Okay, now, when measuring social impacts, did you find any difference between young people engaged voluntarily and young people? Unfortunately, we can't read the second part of the question, but maybe, here we go. Engaged through their schools, okay. Josefa, I mean, you've worked exclusively with school groups, is that right? Or do you also work with individual young people? Can individual young people sign up and contribute?
So far we have worked only with the schools. So the teachers are really the key person that connect us with the students.
Okay. And I imagine it would be difficult to work with individual young people in terms of the equipment they need for the lab work, but also I think you have certain standards, you need to set in terms of data quality and so on. So it's important for you to have that kind of structure with the school.
Exactly. For us, it's very important that the teachers are involved because it's the samples and the data that they generate are going to be used for a research project.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that the data is collected like following the proper protocols. Mm-hmm. So that's why we put a lot of attention on generating the educational materials, like videos and PowerPoint presentations, so that the teachers can really convey the importance of the scientific question that that the students are going to collaborate in answering.
Yeah.
So for us, it's very key that the teachers are involved.
Okay. Don't know if you had anything to add on that one, Marcus?
Well, I just saw there was a question on Slido about...
very good. It's gone off the screen now, but go ahead,
about feedback to focus groups.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And I suppose this is another part of citizen research that I think is exciting, is that there are opportunities now, and we would be encouraging our citizens, researchers, to be authors on our academic papers. It's not for everybody, but it's something that for some is very interesting. There are a lot of volunteers out there who are very, very scientifically minded and are very expert, bird identification, plant identification, etc. So this is the type of expertise we need to bring into our scientific work. So that's the type of feedback we get. We also get, they get to see their work. They see it on our website, they get to see it back. And then we tell them, we say, this is what you've told us and this is what you're going to do. And we also do this by way of making sure that we've captured the right sentiment. But then when we've got the right sentiment, they then want to do more. And our job is to say, well, how can we help you do more? And that just makes it all very fun.
Yeah.
Challenging, but fun.
Yeah. I think maybe now is a good time to bring Eveline into the conversation, if that's okay. So I mentioned earlier on when I was introducing you, Eveline, that in your own research, you work very closely with young people. So perhaps could you just start off by briefly outlining, the scope of your research and how you work with young people?
Sure, yeah, but I'm so impressed by these ERC grantees. You're really front runner, so I feel that everything I say, I cannot live up to the wonderful work that you are doing. But indeed, besides being ERC Vice President, I'm fortunately also a full-time scientist, and I study the conditions under which young people can grow up successfully. So then it's quite easy to also have young people involved in your research. I think it's a necessity, actually. So the research goes from finding out what are sensitive windows in brain development to using snowballing methods together with young people, where we develop new questionnaires together with them to put out the surveys and get their opinions in the study, and then evaluate it with focus groups and so on. So I think these are some examples of citizen science as well, and I enjoy it a lot. And the scope of your research is so enriched because you can reach out to so many more people and collect data in so many more diverse environments.
Yeah. So it's a question of scale, but also, I mean, if I understand correctly, it's a kind of almost a sort of philosophical thing that you can't sit in your lab or your university office reading papers and doing research. You need to be in contact, especially in your case when the subject of your research is that group.
Well, yeah, I have to agree. It's something that needs to fit your own ambition and the own way you want to engage in science. I think there's some people in labs doing fantastic work, but for other scientists it's super inspiring to seek out these novel perspectives. And I think personally I'm one of those scientists. I always want to enrich my methods, see if I can find new ways to explore my questions. And in a way, even though citizen science has been used possibly for centuries, with all the new technology available, it is now a very novel method. So we're finding out what are the best ways to do this, and it's just very exciting time with lots of possibilities.
Yeah, and you mentioned methods. I mean, citizen science is one method amongst others that you may use as a researcher. I mean, what are some of the pros and cons of using that method? And how do you need to construct your research in a way that you get the maximum benefits, but also compensate perhaps for any downsides of working out in the wild, I think is the expression.
Yeah, I think many scientists are always searching for the perfect method, but the perfect method doesn't exist. So, for example, when I do my research in the lab, I can very much control the settings and try to answer questions related to causality, for example. But when I do research in the wild, so to speak, then it's possible to learn many more things that I might not have thought of when I was only being in the lab. When doing that research out in the neighborhoods where young people engage with their friends and finding out what's going on there, there might be also the problem that it might be less generalizable to a broader scale. So here you see that every method has its advantages and its disadvantages, but if you use them together, then the advantages of one can compensate the disadvantages of the other. So in that sense, I think it really has something to add, this method. We can really learn new things. And well, we saw brilliant examples just now.
Yeah. Maybe, Josefa, I don't know if on this question of using different methods, I don't know, is there anything you would like to add from your experience based on what Eveline just mentioned? So using citizen science, but perhaps alongside other methods with more controlled environments.
Yeah, that's actually what we do, no? But in our case, what we try to do is the citizens really replicate the protocols that we are using as scientists. So that when we analyze the samples, we make sure that they have been collected and have been treated the same exact way.
Yeah.
So in our case, it's more like using exactly the same method for the citizen scientists and for the scientists.
Yeah, and we heard from them that they really feel like they're real scientists, which is nice to hear. I don't know, is that your experience as well, Eveline, when you work with young people? Do they feel proud to be involved?
Absolutely. So we know that the late teenage years, so between 15 and 20 or so, young people really have the need to feel autonomy, get respect, and make impact. And this is one of those examples where they can explore, have an impact, contribute to knowledge. And that's something that we find important during our whole lifetime, but especially this phase of late adolescence, where young people really want their voices to be heard, to make a difference for society, being agents of change, so to speak. And we've seen that also for centuries already, that this is a sensitive window in development where people really want to contribute. And then having the opportunity to engage in science and help with building new knowledge, I mean, it's fantastic.
And I was wondering, I mean, you were listening to Josefa and Marcus explaining their work and how they engage with different communities. Do you have any kind of questions for them? Is there anything you were, dying to know more about, but we didn't have time for?
Oh, absolutely. So maybe I can start with you. But the question that I was having is that, so you seem to use citizen science as a method, but you evaluate it at the same time, which is super interesting and inspiring. So how do you do that methodologically?
It's not easy. I wish it was. What we do is we reflect. We reflect on our work as we go along. So we take stock, we talk to each other. I've got a team of people, we discuss it among ourselves, and we look at what has emerged. What emerged for us that we weren't expecting was the teenage voice that was coming out so much. And I'm not surprised, because there's a global movement of teens who are very, very strong and want their voice heard about climate change. So I'm not surprised, but delighted that it emerged. So we do a reflective process as we go along, and we embrace change rather than resist it.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And how about you, where you do your fieldwork in these different countries? Is the finding that the outcomes are the same wherever you do these projects, or are there also differences depending on which countries you work with?
No, so far I'd say that it's pretty even. Like teachers, it's easy to find teachers that are very motivated to work with us in all the different countries that we have been working with. So we are currently running the project in several schools in Spain, in Germany, in Ukraine. But
not in the Netherlands yet?
Not yet.
Oh, we have to get that going.
Yeah, and we have one school from Colombia in South America that has recently joined. So we are going beyond the European Union.
Yeah, yeah. So in the European Year of Youth, I mean, these are such wonderful examples, and even go abroad, outside of the borders of Europe. Wonderful.
I understand we have a few more questions from our live audience, so perhaps we have time to take a couple more before we start wrapping up. So let's have a look. Mexico, okay, so not just European audiences following us today, that's great. From your perspective, what has changed in the crossover between citizen science and educational institutions in recent years? Maybe I could start again with you, Josefa.
Yes, I think they are now very open to incorporate citizen science into their curriculum. So, for example, what our teachers do is like they talk to the director of the schools, and they make sure that the project is incorporated into the education of the kids. So does it tend to be the initiative of individual teachers or individual schools, or are there examples of countries where this is really a mainstream part of the educational curriculum? No, so for now it's like individual teachers that approach us to be part of the project, and then they talk and they work with the directors, or even they go to the level of the local government to incorporate the citizen science into the curricula of the school.
Right.
Yeah.
And Marcus, so what's the situation in Ireland?
There are schools are always wanting to participate. There's always going to be one teacher. I think we all have a teacher that we know was very inspirational to us at some stage in our, and I think these are the teachers that are probably engaging with you. But you know, the one good thing about it is that the other good thing about citizen science is that citizen scientists are the best recruiters of other citizens. So we have one teacher in one school, and maybe for competition or maybe for just to see what's going on. They also attract others who might be involved or might wish to be involved. So the benefit to the research team is that it naturally increases in size.
Yeah.
So I would assume something like that has happened.
Yeah. And Eveline, perhaps, I mean, there's a bigger debate, obviously, about trust in science and people becoming familiar with the scientific method and understanding how that works and, you know, how uncertainty is part of it and so on. And you know, a lot of people say if we want to make progress with this, we need to start with the younger generations. I mean, you know, do you think that this is something that should be done in a more widespread way in schools across Europe and beyond?
Yeah, so let's start with the young. So I think that trust in science is important for everybody, of course, but yeah, it's very hopeful to engage the new generation of young people who are open to it, often have a lot of curiosity. And also in our focus group, young people also mentioned to us that they want to learn more, for example, about what is real science, what is fake news, and they want to be educated on these types of topics. So what's the best way to do it than learning to be a scientist yourself?
Yeah. Great. I think I saw there were one or two other questions. If we could have them back up on the screen. Have you considered collaborating with open science non-academic groups? Greetings from the Swiss Community Lab Aquarium. Aquarium in French, okay. So, I don't know if anybody...
I think all of the citizen science is with non-academic groups, right?
Yeah.
I understand it.
By definition, it's open. So, and the European Commission, and much of the work now is to make science more open and more available. The more open it is, the better it will be for everybody. So I think, yes, these are the types of things. I don't know this particular one, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. And I think I saw there was a specific question for Josefa about how you select the teachers do you select the teachers you work with? Is there a kind of vetting process? There's some criteria that people have to meet in order to be admitted to your program?
Yeah. So because they are part of this active research project, what we ask them is that they commit to sample in the same locations for several years, because that's very important for us, for our research project. So that's one thing that we ask for them. And also they need to be committed to participate in the communication of the project. So it's very important for us that like the experience is not only enjoyed in the school, but the school makes the whole town. This is rural areas, so it's small cities. So very important that the school makes the whole town aware that they are participating in the project and why they are doing it, etc.
Okay, so the time commitment and the communication and outreach parts, very interesting. Okay. Perhaps just a last couple of questions and then we should wrap up because we're almost out of time. But perhaps to return to you, Eveline, I think we were all inspired to just see the enthusiasm and the energy of the school groups from Spain and Ukraine we spoke with. I mean, does their experience match with what you've been able to offer to young people through your own research?
Oh yes, it's wonderful. Huh? We all get enthusiastic when we see young people, being so involved also in raising awareness for important issues such as also saving our environment. at the same time, it should not all be on the shoulders of young people. But having
Sure.
said that, it's wonderful to see that. And what is also very nice of working with young people is that they're usually not so impressed by the world we live in now today. And the older generations may think, wow, it's a pretty good world, huh, that we shaped here together. And then the young generation is like, I'm not so impressed. I think it can be better. And that is the type of energy that I really love about working with adolescents. It's also a bit of a mirror that they give you. And they will often want to change things. Usually they have very good ideas. Also a face of a lot of creativity.
Great. And Marcus, for Novel Eco, what's next? I mean, what are the next priorities for you in terms of rolling out your project and getting people involved?
So what we're at the moment doing is we're just getting to the phase where we've got an absolute ton of very unusual research questions that we weren't expecting. Some have emerged, and so we've somehow got to get them into a way that we can ask our citizen scientists to gather those data. And that's the next phase. We're developing a toolkit, an online app, that we can ask people to systematically gather. So it's one thing noticing nature in the cities, but doing it systematically is something that's relatively new and hasn't really been done before. So if we can get more systematic data available, and all our ecological data will be made 100% public so that other scientists can use it. And that way we can actually encourage more data gathering. And that doesn't have an age limit on it, upper or lower. We must also be thinking of the other limit as well. There's the upper age limit and the lower. There's none that allows everyone to have access to that. So that's the next phase for us.
Okay. And Josefa, you mentioned that you were open to additional schools joining the project, and Eveline was talking earlier on about the way that citizen science can allow you to scale up your research. But is there a kind of upper limit, beyond which it becomes too much, it becomes overwhelming, you can't manage the contacts, you can't handle that much data? Yeah, what is the upper limit, upper threshold?
Yeah, there is definitely an upper limit because we really want to sequence all the samples that we get from the schools. I mean, it's very important for us so that we can give them feedback, like real feedback about what they are doing. But this project is part of a European network of scientists, and it would be great to manage to get more schools in different countries involved, and we can link them to the researchers in their countries. So they can have like a more personal connection with the science that is doing in their own countries. I think this is very relevant, especially because we are working in rural areas. So this is small cities far away from research, far away from the big scientific centers. So it's very important to establish these close connections between real scientists, like active scientists, and the schools. So there is a limit, right? But at the same time, I think we need to keep it growing.
Yeah. Okay, well, congratulations to all of you for your work. Thanks so much for coming here and sharing your experiences in our session today. So thanks, Josefa, Marcus, and Evelina. Of course, I'd also like to thank Thomas Pesquet for contributing his message, but definitely we would like to thank Antonio, Celia, Lydia, and David from Tomelloso in Spain. We'd like to thank Maria, Lucia, Mikhailo, and Iham from Odessa in Ukraine, as well as their teacher, Denis Radionov. Fantastic that you could join us, and we wish you all the best. And thank you to all of you if you joined us for our session live today. The recording will also be available on the European Research Council's YouTube channel. So thank you very much for joining us and also for interacting and submitting your questions. You can find other examples of ERC grantees that are doing citizen science in their projects. So you can find some inspiration, also some resources there. And you can also continue the conversation and interacting on Twitter using the hashtag ERCEngage. So thank you very much for your attention, and that's all for now.
We're out.
Okay.